All right, these are 3 components that would increase your velocity throwing from any position. Now understand, second base probably isn't wanting to increase their velocity, but you know, third base, shortstop, definitely in the outfield. Velocity means you're getting the ball where it needs to go quicker. And so there's other aspects of doing that. And so we're just looking at throwing velocity. The ways of just getting the ball there quicker on without just focusing on throwing velocity would be how quickly, once you get the ball, do you get rid of the throw? We're not going to cover that here. Here is just purely velocity. But there is a balance. So sometimes when you go to pick up more velocity, you take longer to get rid of the ball. And then the velocity, increase in velocity could balance out you taking longer. So you always have to have that in the back of your mind and making sure that you're not adding something and subtracting another and kind of, you know, washing it out and it's not having the effect. So something you got to keep in mind. But we're going to look at these 3 components that increase velocity. So for example, like if you're in a showcase and you're really trying to get good velocity across the diamond from the outfield, because you know they're clocking that and you want to see something in those high digits of, you know, 90 plus. So these things would be huge. First off, right out of the gate, your momentum to getting to the ball, or your momentum before your throw, before foot plant. The moment I plant my drive foot, that means it's time to start throwing. That means I can't create momentum except for just shifting my weight forward, which we should do. But if I've already done a good job getting a lot of momentum, that's already happening, right? Going into front foot strike. So momentum. So practice that. Practice getting more explosive, but under control, because the worst thing you do is get a lot of energy and then you're out of control going into foot plant into your throw. So work on getting low, getting good drives. And when I say force vector angles, what I mean is when your ankle to knee, that line, you want to get that more in line where you're pushing energy, because that's pushing off the ground. So if my shin's up, I'm probably not going to push a lot of energy that way. But if my shin starts to get down, that's why sprinters get down, throwers get down, then I start pushing my energy there. So that means right out of the gate, like if I'm an outfielder and I'm waiting, this leg is probably back, kind of like a sprinter, wherever you want to go here, because you might want to close off quickly, wherever it needs to be. That gets in that position to create, first you can quickly create that energy. So in your initial drive, what we call drive shuffle step, get this vector set up in the direction you want to push, either linear or lateral, depending on where the ball is going to be out of that push. Is it going to be right there? Are you going to take an extra step and then right there? Whatever it takes to get a lot of good enough energy that you can handle, that's going to be your first component. That's going to be huge. And that's where, like, even if they're backhanding to you, you got to plant that foot and, you know, field the ball, but get that vector down so you can come out of that quickly, shuffle step, and go into your throw. So be very aware of the drive leg position when you start your momentum, and then be very aware of how quickly you can get your energy going. That's huge. That's going to be so huge to your velocity at the end, because we're using that energy. The next one's going to be the front foot. Now that, it doesn't really come in this order, because the one I'm going to talk about after that is actually happening kind of in the process of a lot of this. But I want you to think back leg to front leg. So my back leg drive and the initial momentum creation, even to my foot plant, I'm going to get into some linear force vectors and get some more pushes off. All those pushes in the ground towards the target are really adding to that potential energy that we're going to get to this ball. But then it's the front foot, and it's the relationship of the two. The back leg pushes the energy forward, the front leg pushes it back. And what it does in the body, when you go to convert it, and that's going to go into the next component, is studies show the back leg pushes the energy in the body, the front leg pushes it out. So think of it that way. Everything you're doing on your back leg to get you going, when you plant to get you going, all that's to pump the energy in. And then when this front foot lands, ideally in a closed position, so not foot straight open, slightly closed. Why? Because rotation is happening in your hips. You're not going to block rotation with your foot straight that well. It's going to throw you off. You're going to start flying off. If you're 20 degrees closed, boom, it'll block it. Everything will square up where you're going. So be aware of closing your front foot off. But when I land, I can land in a little flexion. And because that pushback is going to add to the velocity I just created. It's going to add to, it's pumping that energy out, but it's going to accelerate the pump of that energy out. So I get that momentum going. I go in to start my throw. I'm closing my shoulders. My front foot lands closed to block hip rotation and to block the momentum going forward. And it lands flexed. So as my trunk comes forward, it pushes back and it pumps that energy up at the end. So get really good at your back leg power and then your front leg power, right? And stay low, because when these vectors are, or when you're high and your hips are high, your vectors, your shins are vertical. So your pushes want to go up. We don't want that. So if you're down, your pushes want to go lateral, right? They want to go lateral, back and forth, back and forth. We use a tool I'll talk about in another video called the stride accelerator. It helps us get low in those positions so we can feel those more linear shin angles, right? Your shins get more linear the lower you get because you have to stride out. Okay, so back leg drive, front leg stability. So you got to catch that momentum, inflection. Don't let it give out. You're going to lose energy. And then you got to push back into it as you go to release. Second huge component to velocity. Probably one of the biggest ones, but think about it. If I'm not driving well off the backside, I'm putting less energy into my front side, so I have less energy to pump out. So you got to think of them together. Like I said, back leg pumps it in, front leg pumps it out. Get good at pumping it in and pumping it out. And remember, you're a position player. You can pump it in with a few added steps and then slam it and pump it out. Start working on that. But this third component is so essential to the other two components having the effect on the ball. Meaning, like, you could pump a lot of energy in, but you don't do this component we're talking about well, and the energy doesn't convert. It's just left in your body. You're probably flying off, probably even misdirecting the ball, or you're releasing the ball before the energy comes through. Like literally you're pushing the ball and then your body throws all the energy forward. I've seen that. So this component is critical to the transfer of that, and it's called hip to shoulder separation. So as you're building all this momentum forward, you're starting to close the shoulders off. You're turning against that energy. Because when I turn against that energy, it's like the catapult. It's like pulling the arm back, right? On the catapult, or even the whip, the handle of the whip, the bow and arrow, all these same principles of conserving energy and transferring energy. There's one part going forward and there's another part going back. We call that a counter movement. And the more we pull back against that, directly in line, not start moving in a different direction, but directly in line. So the energy's going this way, and I pull directly back against it. When I go to release, as long as the pivot point is stable, boom, I get a huge explosion in energy, an acceleration of energy. And you see that when you do a biomechanical breakdown of a pitcher. When you look at the pelvis, the trunk, to the arm, you see the speeds picking up, like the whip, like the catapult, like the bow and arrow, okay? So you're driving initially, you're planting, you're ready to push back, but you're countering against that. As your hips open, your shoulders close, you're stabilized, now you're ready to push back with the front leg. This will turn over and kind of stabilize with that front leg, and then here comes your shoulders. Your arm will lay back because it's countering too, and then your energy will continue to funnel up, but accelerate up. And just remember, if you don't do that, and you drive, you plant, and hips and shoulders, this and this come together, you release too early and you don't accelerate that energy, right? And you don't create that torque between your hips and shoulders that's, uses muscles and it creates elasticity and stretch shortening, and that it helps also accelerate more energy up. So remember, let's go over the three real quick. The back leg drive to get the momentum, even into foot plant. The front leg stability to pump it out. The delay in the trunk, the hip to shoulder separation to accelerate and multiply those forces up. You do those things optimally well, you're going to have a huge jump in velocity. I mean 10, 15 miles an hour, depending where you're coming from. I mean, you could go past that depending where you're coming from. But it's significant. We're not talking a few miles an hour. We're talking about significant high levels of velocity. So if that helps, you want to learn more and you want to get into the 2X Velocity programs where you train this across the board, from the lifting to the drill training to learning the mechanics better. Go to TopVelocity.net. Check out the 2X Velocity program. If you have any comments here, please put them below and keep watching. We have a lot more videos for you.